Holy crap. We are here. We started working on Fathers 14 months ago. I started recording podcasts about 12 months ago. And here we are. We are publicly launching. We have swag. We've got beer, labels. We've got packaging. We've got a website. We've got press coverage. We've got a podcast coming out. We're in over 60 locations already. We are launching in Whole Foods this month. Nuts. I started recording these podcast episodes, partially for my own consumption. Like, it's really cool to be able to look back on starting something from the ground up. And then separately, I just think it's so rare to get a view from the outside on what, starting something new is like, what it's like to birth a new brand. And so I hope that's something that's interesting, that you guys enjoy it. And for me, listening back, I hadn't actually listened back on the episodes until just today. It's really wild to think about how much has happened in a year, as well as how much we've learned, right? There's a lot that I didn't know when we first started recording this. And so the next two episodes that you'll listen to were recorded over a 6-month time span from November through April. It's September today. And we really can cover the founding and conception of the brand and the company. At the end of the second episode, I'll also cover everything that has happened since April. Huge shout outs to my co-founders, Joe Cloyes, Steve Cly, Harvey Kinney, Gabe Rangel. What a journey, boys. And finally, you'll notice that the podcast isn't called Fathers. And that's because we are using these kind of founding episodes as the starting point to actually launch a new podcast with Ashton Wall and myself. For those that don't know Ashton, she is a great friend of mine, one of the smartest and most successful people I know. More details to come there. You'll get to know her soon. With that, enjoy some of the insights on the founding of Fathers, including my many sleepless nights. Most of these recordings were done in the very wee hours of the morning, and lots of learnings. Thanks, guys. Hey, everyone. I'm Connor. It's 6:57 a.m. on a Saturday. I've been up since 5:45 thinking about work. Last night, I was with two brewery owners until about 11 p.m. Didn't get to bed till midnight. This week, I worked my full-time job and also found time to visit 7 different breweries that we're looking at buying, brew another few thousand beers, hosting an event today with another 50 people, taco truck, another couple thousand beers. And at 2 p.m., I fly down to LA to meet with some of the ownership with the Eagles, maybe some investors. And then, I've been up most nights this week from between 2 to 6 a.m. working and recording this before my son screams so much that he wakes up my wife. And I think that's part of the reason that I'm recording this. It feels like the epitome of an entrepreneur's day, or of my days at least. And part of the reason that I wanted to do this is to help people understand what this stuff's like and to learn. I think that's actually one of the best things that you can do for other people that are considering doing this. Separately, it's pretty cool to look back on this kind of stuff and be able to learn and grow from it. So I'm going to try to record every week. What are the learnings? What worked? What didn't work? Why? What am I most excited about? 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes max. Who am I? My name's Connor. I co-founded a software company and we sold that for $70 million back in 2021. It's in the influencer marketing space. And then in terms of the rest of the squad, we've got Joe, my co-founder. He was a co-founder and CEO of Youth to the People, which is a clean skincare brand, which he sold to L'Oreal. We've got Steve, who is our CFO, COO. He's sold companies for over $2 billion combined. He's also my father-in-law. We've got Harvey, who studied under Will Kemper, who's apparently a bit of a craft beer god and has won many medals for making lagers, and also is a good buddy of mine for a long time. And then Gabe, who's the best man at my wedding, and then trains a bunch of NFL athletes. He was a Marine Special Forces before that. So that's a squad. There's 5 of us, which feels like a lot for a founding team, but I think it's the right approach for us here. And then in terms of what we're doing, we're making clean beer because I love beer. I want this product to exist. And turns out beer's really fucked up. So there's Roundup, arsenic, lead, plastic, and you'll hear me talking about that more over time, but just trust me, it's not good. And I think separately, it's a little scary. Beer is not a market that's growing very fast. And it's not a market that a lot of people are going after, especially the big beer market, right? So 70% of the market, 75% of the beer market is light beer. Corona, Modelo, Stella, Bud, Coors. But again, you start looking at that stuff and it's bad. We're here to fix that. And hopefully, I want us to be successful, but I want all beer to get better. You don't have to drink our beer. That's not my goal. And then what are the big problems we're facing right now? So a few things. One, I think we want to get a big face, big name for this thing, but that's going to be hard. My number one fit far and away is a guy named Pat McAfee, who a lot of you guys will know, but haven't had that conversation yet. Unclear if we're going to be able to get him. And if we don't get him, do we go somewhere else? Second thing that's keeping me up at night is we're working with a branding agency. They're very good, supposedly, but I'm not super confident they're going to be able to get the brand right. And in this game, branding is like such a big deal. Third, we're right now trying to decide between should we contract manufacture or should we build our own facilities. If we buy our own facilities, you got lots of fixed costs. But if you contract manufacture, you don't control the process, which for us, is going to be really important to make it as clean as we can make it. And the last one is everybody I talk to says that beer is a super capital intensive business. It costs a lot of money, but you can't really raise money until you get early traction. So you kind of have to finance it yourselves, which we've got the capabilities to do, but I also don't want to burn through all my cash to get it going. That's another thing that's keeping me up at night. And again, I'll keep you updated on these as we go each week. What I'm most excited about, our early lab tests came back way better. They're way, 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 way better. And we were talking about it last night. I was like, I think we're going to be cleaner than water, which is pretty cool. Maybe that ends up being a tagline. Who knows? And it tastes good. So, people like it. They like drinking it. I like drinking it. And we haven't picked the final recipe. We've got 4 different recipes we're testing today to see what people like, and another 2 coming out in another month. So that's the other thing. I'm also just really personally excited. I'm pumped on it. It's fun. I like this stuff. I like getting something started and getting it moving. And I'm enjoying telling the story to other people, and they tell other people, right? So it's a story that's easy to tell. And then I think the final thing is when I tell that story, what you find is the first thing people ask is like, well, what else is good? What else is bad? Like, what am I drinking? Is that what I'm drinking good? And there's just not a lot of data out there because it costs money to run these kinds of tests. But, we're going to buy a bunch of lab equipment to test our own stuff to make sure we're clean. And it was like, oh shit. At our testing facility, which is going to be like where we make the beer itself, we can have people come in, bring your favorite drink. We'll run the labs for you for free. And it's such a good idea. And I think it's so good from a variety of perspectives. I think it'll be great content for people, right? If we fly in influencers, let them test their stuff. And it's also just fun. It's cool. And it doesn't cost much money, which I love that kind of stuff when it hits you. And with that, we're at 7.5 minutes. I promise I'll get better over time. Promise I won't be in a ratty t-shirt at 7 a.m. But, such is life. All right. Bye, guys. Week 2, baby. Here we go. I am really excited, mostly because it's hard to get these kinds of things going. And once you get in a rhythm, you do like 1, 2, 3, 4, they start to add up, and then you just kind of keep going. And so this is number 2. These are some of the things we got done this week. So if you remember from last time, we were going to have a big party. We had the big party. We called it Beers Giving right before Thanksgiving. We had 75 people over, handed out a couple thousand beers. It was a blast, got tons of photos, good reviews. People liked the beer. We crushed Budweiser like 4-1 in terms of tasting competitions, blind tasting. That was awesome. Got our first shotgun with my good friends Dane and Rob Walker, which was unexpected, but great. Shot on an iPhone 3, I think. And then I think what was cool is people took it home to Thanksgiving and they got to try it out and hand it to their friends and their family and got more photos. So I really want to do that again for Christmas, and I want to do that every year and probably every holiday. Why not? Can't imagine a better way for it to get introduced to other people. Then right after that, flew down to LA, met up with Joe and Gabe. We had dinner with Lane Johnson, his marketing manager, one of the minority owners of the Eagles. Got drinks after that with a bunch of guys, including Jason, Dr. Jason, who is the founder of Therabody, who is insanely connected with athletes. Really would love to get all of them involved, right? Don't want to overcommit, but they're all people that I would absolutely love to have as part of the brand in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see what happens from that. I flew back the following morning, and then we hosted our first charity golf tournament hole where we're handing out beer. So thanks, Haley, for doing that. Brittany and her brother Brandon Patterson hosted the event, which went to high school with them, and Brandon loved the beer, which is awesome. And so that was really cool. I love that as a channel for us. I think it's just such a good opportunity. People stop at the golf hole. They're hanging out. They have opportunity to like learn about the story, learn about how we're making it clean. It's just such a good avenue, and golfers love to drink beer. So that's also good. I really want to lean in heavily there. We also this week got some new investors into the brand. So that was really cool. And then we also
came up with a kind of a fun tagline, which I was talking to Joe and Steve. I was like, the crazy part is, this beer is going to be cleaner than water. And they were like, oh shit, cleaner than water. Like, that's epic. And I agree. So that's kind of fun. I don't know if legally we're going to be able to say that, but it will be true, at least in terms of plastics and all kinds of other stuff. And then we sent in a bunch of lab samples too and all that. So big things we need to get done this week. So these are the things that we are working on. So we really need to line up kind of warehousing and shipping providers. So we don't have our own place to do that. And the big problem is until you get that place, you can't actually start the licensing process. And the licensing process takes months. So until we get the location set up, we don't get a license, and we can't get a license. It takes like 4 months to get a license. So I want to get that done fast. And so I think we found a spot just today and feel good about that. It was through one of Joe's old contacts. Separately, we've been really debating whether or not to brew the beer ourselves, like have our own facility, or to use what's called a contract manufacturer or a co-man. That means somebody else is brewing your beer. The nice part about a co-man is that there's no fixed costs, meaning you don't have rent, you don't have facilities, you don't have any of these kinds of things. Utilities. The problem with that is it's very, very hard to make that profitable. So like to pack like a single case of cans, which is 24 cans, costs you about $13. It's like 50 cents a can. That's totally infeasible for us from a cost perspective. So we're really debating that right now. I think we've landed on having our own facility, which requires more capital, which scares me a little bit. But the way that we're thinking about using it is not as like a brew pub, but it's really more of like a showroom or a lab where you can come and learn about why beer is dirty, how we make it clean, what the process looks like. I also want to have lab equipment in there where we can test the beer because we're going to have to do that anyways. And then we could test other people's products. So I think using it as more of a content hub and a marketing hub, as well as an actual brewing facility, is the way that we're thinking about it. And we've got a lead there. We've met with a bunch of these places and there's a ton available right now. So we met with one that we really like, but we got to figure out whether we can get it for the right price. So cross your fingers for that. And then the other big thing we're working on is, I would love to make Pat the face of this brand. I think he's perfect for it. I think it's an ideal fit. Love the guy generally, but need to get that meeting set up. And then once we get it set up, I have to get him excited enough to actually do it. And so want to make sure that I'm also finding backups to that plan too, right? If that plan doesn't go through, what are other things that we can do? But I am also going all fucking in on it. Like I'm all fucking in. I'm going to do everything I can to make that successful. I think finally, I was talking with John, who's the co-founder of my other company. He was just reflecting on how thankful I am that one, I got to start a company with him, who is one of my best friends. And then two, I get to start this company with a bunch of people that I'm either really good friends with, or it's like my father-in-law or one of my best friends or somebody I've worked with for a long time or whatever. Like I just get to work with really awesome people on this. And it's kind of weird that it's all come together in this way. And I think the opportunity to do that, as well as work in an industry that I'm like really both passionate about, a genuine consumer of, is pretty cool. And so I love that. I'm feeling blessed. So anyways, week 2, I'm out. Hope this was helpful. We'll keep going. All right. Later, guys. Hey guys, week number 3. It's 5:54 a.m. and I am getting ready to fly down to LA, and I am a mixture of pumped and exhausted at the same time. I think for me, these kinds of times have always made me think about a quote, and I think it's a little intense for what we're actually doing, but still, it's just how I feel. So there's a quote from Vince Lombardi where he says, "I firmly believe that any man's finest hour, the greatest fulfillment of all that he holds dear, is that moment when he has worked his heart out in a good cause and lies exhausted on the field of battle, victorious." Now, we are far from victorious at this point, but in some ways, I don't even think that matters. I think for me, one of the things that gives me the most energy, particularly when it comes to starting something new, is just giving every ounce of what you have to it. All of your mental energy, all of your physical energy. You're pushing everything to the brink or to the edge. And so that's happening, and it sounds hard, and it is, but it's also one of the coolest parts. Anyways, let's talk about what's working this week and what's not working, and what we're working on, what we got coming up. So I think the first thing, I was reflecting recently on just how powerful long-term relationships are and community is over time. So, when we're going down for this meeting in LA, I'm meeting with Scott, who's the CEO of Rare Beauty. That's a relationship that I've been building for, 12 years. Meeting with Ju, who's the co-founder and CEO of Hero Cosmetics. That's a relationship that I've been building for probably 7, 8, 9 years. Meeting with 2 people that Gabe, my co-founder, which is a relationship I've been building for like 15 plus years. And he's got 2 people that he's known for a decade plus, Jay Glazer and JJ Dudum. JJ Dudum blew up Casamigos, and Jay Glazer is like one of the most connected people in the NFL of all time. Seth is an investor we're meeting with that my co-founder Joe has known for like 7 or 8 years. And the contract manufacturer we're talking about, like, it's a series of connected relationships that go back like 15 years. It's a long time. So that's the first thing, just thinking about how powerful that is and how when you're young, you don't really get that perspective, but I'm getting it as I get older. The second thing that worked and is going well, we got the second round of feedback from our agency, and it was like way better than the first round. Last time we were talking about whether we were going to use contract agents, contract manufacturing, or our own facilities. I think we really zoned in on using contract manufacturing. I think the reason for it is it gives us a lot more flexibility. And I think we realize that we want to limit capital, right? It's going to be a very capital intensive business. We want to spend as much of it as we can on inventory and marketing. The phrase I heard the other day from Madeline at Idea was, you want to get cans in hands, right? Like if people don't try the product, they're not going to buy it. And so I really want to reserve the capital that we have for that. The other thing that worked really well this week was, when you found a company, one of the primary ways that a company fails is friction in co-founder relationship. And so for Joe and I, this is a new relationship on the co-founding side. And one of the things that's really important when you start a business, and I realized this with our last business, is, when you go into a business and you have a pre-existing relationship, either a friendship or you are family, you're less likely to give that person critical feedback, right? Negative feedback that they need, because you don't want to hurt the friendship. You don't want to hurt the family relationship. This comes from a book by Noam Wasserman called The Founder's Dilemma. He really looks at this a lot. Fantastic book. And so Joe and I really got on the same page in terms of making sure that we can give each other this kind of critical feedback. The other thing I think is going well is we're moving really fast right now. And I think the value of speed is highly underrated in the way that it's perceived by everybody else, right? So in order to build something that's really big, you need to get everybody else really excited. Vendors, partners, investors, future team members. And when they kind of see you moving really, really quickly, that gets them excited, right? They want to join the rocket ship. And so the biggest thing that we're working on right now is a totally crazy idea. But the basic principle of the idea is, so Gabe trains Lane Johnson. 2 years ago, Lane Johnson said, hey, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, I'm going to buy everybody in Philly a beer. And I was like, wait, the Lions and the Eagles, Lions are my team, are number 1 and number 2 most likely to win the Super Bowl. What if, I'll buy the Lions, anybody in Detroit, I'll buy you a beer. And if, the Eagles win, he buys a beer for everybody in Philly. And so the problem is we don't have a name. We don't have any licensing. We're not finalized in terms of the formula. We have nowhere to manufacture it. It's in like 8 weeks, and it takes like 4 of those weeks just to brew the actual beer itself. And this is a highly regulated industry, which I'm not used to, right? So software, you just kind of move. You do whatever you want. And beer, it's like you need this person's approval and this person's approval. And there's the 3-tier system, which is like, you got to have a middleman if you actually want to sell it. And it's all happening over Christmas. And so trying to make all that happen in a very short period of time is both, one, it's really hard to do that. But 2, it also feels like a really unique period of time. And so it has been moving faster than I probably ever moved in my life. And then the other thing that's nerve-wracking about this is, we've raised some money and we have access to more money, but this is going to be a big chunk of our initial capital, right? This would be like $50,000 at a minimum. And so do we need to raise additional capital? Is this the best way to spend $50,000 before we literally have any distribution? I don't know. This also could limit, if we go big with this too early, we're not going to have, or may not have the opportunity to have conversations with people like Pat McAfee or others that we really want to be kind of the face of the brand and a partner in the brand. And so that could, if we go too fast or too early, the brand could be underdeveloped. There's just a lot of risks, but that is something that's giving me a lot of energy right now. And it's part of the reason I'm flying down to LA. So anyways, this is week 3. Hope this is helpful. See you guys next week. Woo! Shit! It's been a week, and it's actually like a week and a half. I have been so heads down. I have not had any time to record for a few days. So probably about 10 days since the last time. So a few things. One, we've just been pushing insanely fast on this Super Bowl project to see if it's even technically possible, feasible, whatever. And I think we've gotten to the point where it is possible. Like we could do it. Now the question is, should we do it? And what really accelerated that was Gabe yesterday said that Lane was going on the Pat McAfee show, which is probably the largest sports show in the country, and he could talk about it or tease it. And so it was really a shit or get off the pot moment yesterday. And just to give you an idea of the scope, we had to line up all of our licensing. We had to line up all of our manufacturing. We had to line up distributors in the states that are in, and each state is different. We had to line up legal. We had to get a sampling company set up. A lot of that was through a great guy named Tony, who's helping us out on the sales side. We had to push the absolute pedal down with our branding agency in a way that they were probably uncomfortable with. We had to get a nonprofit organized in order to do it. We had to confirm Lane's participation. That's the list I could come up with in 2 minutes. So it was a lot, but we did it. And so the question becomes like, should we do it? And the downsides, right? So these are the risks that we identified in terms of like, should we do it? Should we not do it? So obviously the upside is you get all the publicity and it helps you get off the ground. You get the attention from the Super Bowl. The downsides are, one, we could be rushing the brand. So we haven't even picked a name, let alone brand identity, visual, bottling, all this kind of stuff. Like you go out there, you put it out there. If it's just not very good, do you screw it up? There are things that we could just mess up in terms of the execution of the event. Like, can we get the beer made in time? Can we get it there? Can we get the right places to distribute it? Are we going to follow all the rules? And then the thing that I was really hung up on was like, can we support it financially? So, I like mapped out like, how much is it going to cost? It's like, okay, we're going to need $500,000 to $1 million by February 1st in order to get it done. Can we actually get that in place? Are Philly and Detroit even the right markets to launch in? Normally you would grow in your local market, which for us is California. We'd expect this beer to do well in California. It's like hard to support out there, right? We're not on the ground telling the story, spreading the word. So, we got Gabe out there in Philly. We got nobody in Detroit. So is that the right thing? And then the other thing is like, okay, we're going to publish this and we're going to publish all this data, or should we publish this data, on how the other beer brands are doing? And are we going to get sued? If we get sued, are they going to block us, right? Because if you, piss off the wrong person, they can basically blackball you from particular states, or you can sign up for a distributor and never be able to get out of it. So here's where we ended up. So after lots and lots and lots of debate, we were kind of split. So I was like, fuck it, we'll get it done. I will cut off my left foot if I have to make it happen. Like, we'll fucking do it. But the rest of the group, weren't sure on it. So it's like, okay, let's take a break. We have a few hours. We'll get back to Gabe in a few hours. And then during that time was when I was really mapping out all the costs and going, shit, I just don't know. Like, can I even get the money lined up? I probably could, but who knows? And then I ended up talking to Marissa, who's my wife, and, kind of came to the conclusion. I was like, I'm out. Like, let's wait. We can launch the brand right. We can take our time. And so I texted Joe and Steve that, and then got some funny text back and an immediate FaceTime call. And they're like, oh my God, we're going to kill you. We just came over the fence to the other side, which honestly, I think is the sign of a great partnership, like that we both were willing to kind of come to the other person's side on the issue. But then that left us with like, well, what are we actually going to do? And then at that point was when Gabe hopped in with what I think was the best idea, which was, Lane can mention it today. This is what happened in 2017. He mentioned it in 2017, like, hey, I'm going to buy everybody in Philly a beer. And then it wasn't until like week 12, this was before the season, week 12, like Bud Light hops on this, says we're going to do it. And so if Lane mentions it during the show, which I think is supposed to happen, we'll see, then, we can hop on that later. It doesn't have to be the first week of the playoffs, right? Like we could hop on this in the NFC Championship game. We could hop on it at some other time when it's becoming more obvious that either the Eagles or the Lions are going to get there. And then the other thing we can do too is we don't have to hold the party at the Super Bowl parade, which is like the real limiting factor. It's like mid-Feb. Like we could host this at a draft party in April, or, at another time during the summer. Like we could just throw a massive fucking party and do it that way. Again, you don't have the advantage of having everybody in the place. Like you'd have everybody at the Super Bowl already there. So you have a captive audience, which is great, but you also don't get drowned out by all the other Super Bowl kind of buzz and such. So yes, it's been one of the craziest 7, 8, 9 days of my life. I'm waking up at 3, 4 in the morning and starting work, which is totally not healthy for me. That's like a ringing in my ears. That can't be good. But even if we don't do anything, we learned an absolutely metric shit ton about how to do this, laws, rollouts, all this kind of stuff. And so I think we'll be able to make it happen. Who knows? Maybe in a crazy world, we actually do make it happen at the Super Bowl parade itself. We're also trying to get Poppy involved, which would be interesting, and Jared Goff's wife, which would be pretty epic, but we'll see. Anyways, good week 4.5. Next week will be Christmas. I'll try and record, probably not as much work, but we'll chat then. Later, guys. Hey, everybody. Week number 6. It is the Friday after New Year's. We kind of missed a week here, but we are back full steam. Finished up the holiday celebrations, and I am ready to fucking crank. So big updates, a lot of updates, and these are kind of plans for the month, but we'll go through them. So first up, we are nailed in on our next contract manufacturer, working with a place called Sudwork out of Davis. Their CEO and owner went to Cal Poly with me. The program is largely built off of the Davis program, which is like the top beer program in the world. Ryan Fry is the guy's name. I think trust is a big deal, and I trust them. He's also personally very into the plastic, clean food problem. It'll also be the first time we brewed there. This will be the first time we packaged this year in bottles. So I'm excited to see it in a bottle and taste it out of a bottle. I do have to figure out how, in the ever-loving God, I'm going to get labels and 6-packs printed in the next 6 weeks, but we're going to try to do that. I think second, we've really started to think about kind of our launch strategy. And there's something that hit me this weekend. So this weekend I was at the 49ers and Lions game, and I went early to tailgate and hand out beer. And I probably handed out 400 beers in, a couple hours, and gathered so much feedback, had connection with people because we had like a team in common. And it was very similar to, I did another handout of beer at a tech event. It's like a creator economy event where like I knew the people knew who I was, had another 300 beers, 400 beers there. And then got invited to, a crab feed, which was the alumni for my high school. And I was like, oh shit, we should do it there. And I just think this is such a good way to grow. And it's like, you basically think about it as, you have networks where you have added layers of social credibility. So that could be a country club you're part of, your high school, your college, whatever it is, and really kind of spidering out through those networks. It just makes them so much more likely to recommend you, right? And tell their friend about you when they have like some connection to you. And I think this is really leaning in on the strategy that Red Bull kind of popularized, which is like the cans in hand strategy. Like the only thing we should be doing is getting people to try our product. Like that is far and away the most important thing, because the barrier to buying something for the first time in the store that they've never tried is very, very high. People don't usually do it. But if you can get your product into their hands, they're very likely to. And then you add that kind of layer of social validation. Like this was somebody who went to my high school. This is somebody who went to my college. This is somebody who is in the same country club. This is somebody who likes the same team as me. It's a very powerful way to grow out. So I really want to lean in aggressively there, and then also continue to lean in and gifting both to partners and investors and distributors, and just keeping the product in people's hands, I think will be critical. I think as we think about that launch plan, there is a question of how much of that do we want to do ourselves? How much of that do we want to kind of bring in somebody like Advantage Solutions, one of these groups that helps you to do that? I don't think we need them yet. I think to really kind of build the fire, you build it yourself, but we'll see. That's the second thing. Next up, we're really trying to zone in on naming and branding. We didn't like the names that our branding agency came up with. Kind of liked them at first. After looking at more, did not like them. We have liked working with this guy named Jason, who was the art director at Sierra Nevada for a decade. He's the one who cranked out these designs, right, which people are really digging. I'm kind of calling him modern Americana. And so trying to find the balance of like, he's also not in a position to like build a website and do all the other stuff. So how much do we lean on him for the kind of visual design and them for the build out of the rest of the brand? And really starting to lean in on that messaging of the next great American lager. I think that sticks. The question becomes now, like, what's the name of the brand itself? Is it Clean Brewing Co? Is it Stand? Is it Fathers? Is it Pure Beverage Brewing? My preferred is Fathers, but we'll see. So working through that with the team. Next up, zoning in on the recipe. So for us, batch number 3 and number 6 seem to be the kind of preferred recipe. That is a version of a recipe that won gold at Great American Beer Fest. It should be very, very good. It seems to be getting the most traction with consumers, although some of our others are also liked, but we think this is the one that's most commercially viable. And I think the thing that I've really zoned in on, striking to an investor who put money into Olipop, right, which blew up. And he said that the founders of Olipop were like, you can really only innovate on 1 or 2 vectors. So in their case, they had like a healthier soda, right? Well, they don't need to be a healthier soda and different flavors. It's like, I'm a healthier soda and I taste a lot like Coke, right? And so if you like Coke, you'll like me, and you want to be healthy, you'll choose me. And so I think for me, people look at these cans and they're like, oh, is that like a better Bud Light or a better Coors Light? Yep. Done. Is it cleaner? Yep, done. You don't have to, it doesn't take much explanation. You're really only innovating on kind of the health aspect, not on the actual flavor aspect, although these will actually taste a lot better too. So that's that. Another thing we're working on right now is identifying labs with increased sensitivity. So one of the things that we've realized is that our labs are not testing to the same level of sensitivity on microplastics we'd want. We're only going down to 10 microns. Technically, the definition of microplastic is 1 micron. So there's going to be even more of it at that level. You have the PFAs, we're not testing far enough down. You have the Roundup, right? Glyphosate, not testing it far enough down. And so I really want to find those before we commit $20,000, $25,000 to testing a bunch of other beer brands. So that's something I need to figure out. We're kind of going back and forth on this cans versus bottles thing. At first, we were like bottles only. It controls the tasting experience. And gets rid of the plastic. But we're wondering if most of the plastic is, one, coming from when they pasteurize it, meaning they superheat the cans to kill the bacteria in it, and that melts the plastic. And two, I think just from a general consumer perspective, I went to the tailgate and it was like, no bottles allowed. It's like, well, shit. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so we're going back and forth. I think we'll probably end up sticking with just bottles, but that's it. And we also need to start actually tracking our cash. So, we're fine. We're in a good position financially, but Steve is going to start, who's our CFO, is going to start getting some kind of cash flow forecast models going and a monthly reporting cadence just to make sure that we don't run out of money. We have a general handle on what we're doing. And then final, just update on the Super Bowl plans. I think, again, my concern is, let's say we do this. Do we have enough money to actually support it, or the networks to really build out that groundswell in Detroit and Philly? I don't know. Right? With that said, Eagles and Lions continue to win. Lions have a huge game coming up in 2 days. If they win, Lions will be number 1 seed. Eagles will be number 2. So it'll be the two most likely teams to go to the Super Bowl. So continue to keep that in our back pockets. We'll see if we get there. Anyways, week 6, a little longer this week. Hope this was helpful, guys. See you next week. Bye.
Hey, everyone. Week 7/8. Sorry, missed last week. It's just been crazy in the best kind of way. So much to do. And I think one of the things that's been fun for me is I was messaging with a good friend of mine, Craig Fuller. He's the founder of a company called Freight Waves. Super successful dude, big Twitter influencer too. And the best part about this stage is you just feel alive. I don't know. Like there's something about this, like getting something from not existing to existing and then people enjoying it and then making it a real company, like this 0 to 1 process that is, for me, just what lights my soul on fire. I don't know. Anyways, okay. So let's talk about what's happened, what we're working on. So I went to Philly for the Eagles game, and we handed out close to 300 beers to really test the East Coast palate to see if there was a difference, because we expected there to be a difference. And what was interesting was, compared to the Lions-Niners game, almost nobody drank IPAs and pale ales, which, then led them to liking different beers. So like in San Francisco, a lot of people liked our number 4, which is like a really hoppy one. And then in Philadelphia, that was not what they wanted. And our number 6 really hit, and a little bit number 5. So it's really good to run that test and also to see what people latched onto. Wheeling around a big wagon with 300 beers got a lot of attention. And so we want to lean into that too. From there, went to New York, had 14 meetings in 48 hours in New York. These kind of blitz days is something I've really found a lot of success in. And also building community. So I think, I had built a really large community of executives in the beauty world. And it was an investment, right? It took time and effort and money, et cetera, but it was so fruitful in the long term. And so building the same thing here, I think is going to be really important, because in a lot of ways, I actually think the alcohol industry operates as a hybrid between B2C and B2B. Because this distributor layer exists and this retail layer exists, the B2B side of things is actually quite important. And that's something I know super well. And so leaning in there, I think, is going to be high leverage. We're getting closer on the naming and the branding. We're really leaning into Fathers being the name. We're checking out whether that works from an intellectual property perspective, and we think it does. And on that, I think what we're going to try to do, because we really like the designs that we have now, and these are in cans, we want to get them to bottles. But it's so important that what we're thinking about doing is kind of parallel pathing our existing agency and a consultant that was the art director for Sierra Nevada who did those designs, and just seeing what they both come up with. And then we'll kind of pick and choose the elements from both that we really like. One thing I am struggling with is,
how much time do I spend on the branding, the naming, the packaging, the juice that's inside, the actual flavor profiles, and how much time should I be spending on, distribution, meetings, this kind of stuff. Like I have another 14 meetings on Thursday and Friday this week. It's like, shit, I'm not going to get anything done, even though a lot happens in those things. So that's one of the challenges I'm facing. So big things that we have coming up. We still need to identify the right labs to get the right level of testing. I really want to get back to, I'd always said that if I started something new, I would do investor updates monthly. Haven't done those yet. Now, it's a very small group of investors and I communicate with them regularly, but I do want to start doing that as a best practice. We also need to decide on our first big production run, which is going to be 20,000 bottles. That's a big deal, big cost. We want to get it right. When do we do it? How much time do we spend doing business development? Like what do I do? Just go knock on the doors of the local bars? Like, I don't know. Like I got to figure that whole thing out, what that launch strategy looks like and when we actually do it. Like when do we take the meeting with Whole Foods? Like how much do we have to have ready? Anyways, quick update for this week. Continuing to press forward. Super excited. This phase is definitely my favorite phase, and we'll keep you guys updated.
Hi, everyone. We are now 14 weeks into these recordings and about 7 months into working on this thing. It is weird to say those numbers out loud. It does not feel like it's been that long, but time passes faster as you get older, I guess. So let's get you guys updated. So it turns out we are going to do something for the Super Bowl. So Gabe, who works on the brand, is part of the brand, and also works with Lane Johnson and Jalen Hurts and all these Eagles players and other players around the NFL, has gotten us into a number of parties for the Super Bowl, including the Fox VIP section at the Four Seasons through Jay Glazer, which, could possibly have Tom Brady, Gronk, some of the team owners, etc., which feels like a pretty big opportunity. So we're going to fly out 600 beers in various ways on Tuesday. Joe and Harvey's going to come in. We got custom 6-pack labels printed for the Super Bowl. And I think the real goal while we're out there is, one, you want to grab a little bit of feedback in terms of people's palates and what they like, what they don't like. But the main thing is building relationships with either athletes, influencers, celebrities, etc., that might want to be a part of the brand. There's also a lot of media folks there during the week before the Super Bowl, which, we got our beer into the hands of Will Compton and Bussin' with the Boys, which is exciting. McAfee will be there, a lot of those types. So hopefully can kind of start to build a lot of those relationships out. So that's first up, really exciting, flying out tomorrow morning. And then second, another thing we've been working on is just shipping product out. So I think getting product into people's hands, both people we're close with and people that are influential, I think is just really critical. It just opens up all kinds of doors that you wouldn't expect. And so, we're trying to get in the habit of collecting addresses whenever we can, through the help of friends and family and neighbors and such. We've shipped out over 300 packages of beer to people already. And it's just great. You just get all kinds of really good stuff out of it. And I knew that intuitively in terms of product gifting being a really important part of it, but it's fun to see it kind of come to fruition. Also bottled our first beer. I'm going to get to try it today, which doesn't sound very good at 7:47 in the morning, but later in the day probably will sound pretty good. So getting it into the bottle was a major milestone. This was at Subwork up in Davis. They had a machine that hadn't been used for a while, and we didn't want to use a mobile bottler because that wasn't viable long-term from a cost of goods perspective. It'd just be too expensive. And so to get that actually working is pretty cool. So I'm excited to see that. And then the other big thing was last week, Joe and I flew out to St. Louis, which turns out St. Louis is kind of the mecca of go-to-market beer executives. So Budweiser, which is based there, which is part of AB InBev, they're the largest beer producers in the world by a pretty wide margin. I'm going to screw up the stats, but I think they're bigger than number 2, 3, 4 combined, something like that. At one point, 10 years ago, they were actually 50% of the entire beer market, which is like, I feel like that's like a monopoly at some point. But you had a really good day. And what it made us do is really run to ground. Like, what's our plan? Like, what are we going to actually do from a go-to-market perspective? Like, how are we going to go launch the company? And so spent time with a guy named CJ Watson, Tony Zangara, Kevin Werner, a mixture of people that have, been at AB InBev historically and are now doing different things. And really got to knock that out. And it's hard to know, like, it costs money to fly out there. It costs time. It costs all these things. But I do think that it was really useful. It was a really good time. And so that was fun. And I think one of the things that came out of that has really got me, this will be the thing we kind of focus on, is when we talked to them, we said, hey, we want to launch in Whole Foods.
Whole Foods is pushing a lot of their beer brands to talk about how organic their products are. And on top of that, they are connected to Amazon, where Amazon is now starting to push beer as a category, right? They haven't historically really sold beer through the Amazon app, but now they are. The reason they hadn't is this whole 3-tier system where you have to work through a middleman. And then also beer is inherently something that's just not very easy to do from a direct-to-consumer perspective. You have to, it's heavy, it's cheap, and so you want to order a case that's going to cost you $25, and it's like nobody's going to do that. But now with Amazon, you can buy a 12-pack and have it delivered to your house in an hour and a half for $5. And so as we had those discussions, the thing that we realized was that Whole Foods does their new brand introductions or their resets in March and September. So if you get approved in March, you roll out in September. If you get approved in September, you roll out in March. And it's like, well, shit, March is in like a month. It's in like 4 weeks. And, we're not there yet. We're not ready yet. And if we don't get March, that means we're not going to roll out till next March. In the best case scenario, which next March is 14 months from now. And that sounds awful. Although maybe I should just be a little bit more patient. Who knows? So what that means is that we have to get like pedal to the metal on most specifically branding. We have to get our branding in very fast order. And we need to also, get our pitch down. Like, what's our pitch going to be? We'll likely work with some of those guys from St. Louis on this just because, again, I've never pitched Whole Foods. It's you want to know the different language, nuance, etc. And then we also need to get introduced to them, which we'll likely do through some family and through these guys in St. Louis that we've gotten to know. And then we also have to get our licensing done, which we've been not doing a good job of that. There's just lots of little paperwork and fingerprints and this, that, and the other thing. And so it's a lot to do in 4 weeks to 6 weeks. I'm hoping we can get it done because I really don't want to wait 14 months to launch Whole Foods. Either way, that's it. That's the update for this week. Thanks, guys. I will record another one in a week or two. Wish me luck at the Super Bowl, and I'll see you on the other side.